Penguin Random House Audio presents Even This I Get to Experience. Written and read by Norman Lear.
You haven't overcome the fear of death until you delight in your own life, believing it to be the carrying out of the universal purpose. George Bernard Shaw. Preface. When I was a boy, I thought that if I could turn a screw in my father's head just a 16th of an inch one way or the other, it might help him to tell the difference between right and wrong. I couldn't, of course, and ultimately he, and I, had to pay a serious price for his confusion. In late June of 1931, just out of third grade and a month away from turning 9, I was eagerly looking forward to my first experience at summer camp. A roll of cloth tape imprinted with Norman M. Lear, Norman M. Lear, Norman M. Lear, sat on the kitchen counter waiting for my mother to cut it up and sew my name into the clothes I'd be taking with me in a few weeks. Meanwhile, my father was about to take a plane to Tulsa. None of my friends in Chelsea, Massachusetts, knew anybody who had ever flown anywhere. It had only been 4 years since Charles Lindbergh flew 33.5 hours in his single-engine Spirit of St. Louis to get from New York to Paris, and the rare plane that was spotted in the sky had us kids chasing around in the street yelling, "Lindy, Lindy!" So Dad flying to Oklahoma was a big deal. He was traveling on some kind of business. Monkey business, said my mother, who sensed that the men he'd fallen in with were not to be trusted. And for my upcoming birthday he was going to bring me back a 10-gallon hat, just like the one worn by my favorite film cowboy, Ken Maynard. "Herman, I don't like this," she told him. "I don't want you to see those men." But Herman, as always, knew better. "Jeanette," he screamed, the veins in his neck bulging as he stood over her, with his nose all but pressing hers. "Stifle!" And off he went. Herman Lear, or as he preferred to be known, H.K., the K standing for King, a name he insisted he'd been given and would never admit to having appropriated, was a man of supreme optimism. A predecessor to Arthur Miller's salesman, Willie Loman, H.K. went out into the jungle each day with a shoe shine and a smile, pledging to come home, his fortune made, in 10 days to 2 weeks. Tops. And this, whatever he was doing in Oklahoma, was merely the latest scheme that would soon result in our being millionaires. He was arrested upon his return on July 3rd for receiving and trying to sell some phony bonds to the Boston brokerage house E.A. Pierce and Company. High on my list of vivid childhood memories is the photograph of my father on the front page of the next day's newspaper, coming down the steps of the courthouse, with one hand holding his hat over his face and the other manacled to a detective. 5 weeks later he was convicted and sentenced to 3 years in Deer Island Prison off Boston Harbor. That evening our house was filled with friends and relatives, offering comfort as they bought the furniture my mother was selling, she having decided on the spot that we couldn't possibly continue to live in Chelsea in such disgrace. At one point, someone I didn't know but instantly disliked offered to buy my father's red leather chair. The throne, from which he had controlled the radio dial on our floor model Atwater Kent, just as, 40 years later, Archie would control the Bunker family's TV viewing from his living room armchair. As my mother and the scavenger agreed on a price, I was devastated. The loss of my father's chair was like losing him twice in the same week. And as if that were not bad enough, I would soon learn that my mother planned to take my younger sister to live with her and leave me with various relatives until my father got out of jail and the family could be reunited. I clutched all that remained of my summer dream, that unused roll of Norman M. Lear.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?